Hiya and welcome back. It is week 1 and this is my first lecture on the reading that we did this week. So we will be looking at an invitation to you as a writer and what that entails. So what does it mean that you are a literary sophisticate from the time you were just a few years old? Let's find out together. The reading for this week comes from our textbook, Janet Burroway's Imaginative Writing, which is the 5th edition. Burroway has revised this textbook a few times, and something she never changes from edition to edition is the assertion that we all started learning to write, she says, at the latest, the day we were born. You have every right to write. You already have skills with language that you learned just by speaking and later reading and writing. Because of these skills, you are, in fact, a literary sophisticate. So, you might take that with a grain of salt. I mean, it might seem strange to you. But what she's really talking about is that you already have the tools to write creatively, and you've had them from the time you were quite young. Learning language is something that we all do as human beings, and using language is something that allows us to convey experience to others. In the chapter, she has a quote from Aristotle that says, "When you change the form of the thing, you change its purpose." What she's saying is it's impossible to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in words. This is because words are of a different form, so that their choice is determined by the vast array of cultural and personal influences that you yourself have. So to expand on this for a second, if we were all to have a similar experience, like for say we went to the same concert, every one of us would have had a different experience. We would have taken away something different, and we would choose different words to relate that experience to others. This is why we never run out of things to write about or even things to talk about. That's because we all experience things differently, and our own personal experience is unique. For example, take the picture on this slide. That woman there in the tree is Daphne, and this is from the Greek myth of Apollo and Daphne. Apollo, who has been shot with a love arrow from Eros, or you might know him as Cupid from Roman mythology, pursues Daphne. She's not excited about his attentions from him and decides to call for help from the other gods. And with that, she transforms herself into a laurel tree. I know, weird, right? So what does that have to do with Burroway? Well, we can take an experience and tell it to others. We are using our words to give it new purpose, new meaning. There are many versions of this story from Greek and Roman legends, and each one gives a different twist on the meaning. Those experiences change, and they modify with each retelling. Ultimately, what we are going to do in this class is learn to imitate. We will imitate what we read, but when we do this, we will make it our own by the words we choose. However, to imitate, first we must read. And we don't read any old way. We need to start reading with an eye to see how a piece of work works. A piece of writing works. What did the writer do to make it successful? So reading as a writer is more concentrated, more active, and kind of more selfish than just reading for pleasure or comprehension. It not only involves us asking, what does this mean? But also, how does this work? Why did the author choose that image, those words, that atmosphere? What techniques of language or pacing or character contributed to this effect? And how can I use that effect in my own work? In the text, Burroway references the British critic F.R. Lewis. He talks about the difference of deconstructing a frog and a poem. To figure out how a frog works, you have to dissect it. You have to cut it up and tear it apart. You can do the same thing with a poem, but the difference is you can put a poem back together again. And when you do so, you have a new understanding of the poem as a whole, and it lives on in you with even more vitality, which is pretty cool. So there will be times in this course that we do just this. We will take apart a piece of writing and then attempt to mimic it. And this is not to stifle your creativity. Instead, it will serve as a jumping off point and allow you to start with an idea and then go beyond the piece of writing and make it your own. So, my personal invitation to you as a writer is to read. Read as much as you can and as widely as you can. You might love fantasy or science fiction, or love to read true crime or thrillers or romance. Whatever makes you happy. My own personal favorite is historical fiction. I'm a sucker for it. But I urge you to go beyond your comfort zone of your favorites and read things that will give you new ideas, new awareness, and new experiences you have not yet considered. The most important thing to remember is that you are allowed to play. You are encouraged to play. But play how? Mix things up. Tell your experience in a different form, from a different perspective or genre, and play your words, your sounds. Experiment with how language works for you. And worry less about, am I doing this right? If you're stressing about making sure something is good in a first draft, you're missing the point. Revision is where we go back and tweak things and make them shine. So, especially in the early drafts of any piece of writing, call playfulness to mind. Take the pressure off yourself and relax. Make it kind of automatic. Play is what prepares us for creativity. When we play, we are in a different kind of mental state and we have a different energy. We use a different part of our brain. So at the end of the chapter, there were a lot of examples of try this. Here are some that I'm going to encourage you to do. A list of lists. In your journal, make a list of lists. It doesn't have to be one of the suggestions here. It can be anything you want. For example, I spent 20 years working at the public library. I got a lot of crazy questions from people that were super funny. Maybe not to them, but funny to me. Like someone once asked me if we had any books with photographs of dragons. Think about that for a minute. Someone else asked me for a book on how to make rocks. I still never quite figured out what she was trying to do. But they were strange and they're all true, and I made a list of these questions. So pick one of these things and make a list in your journal. The neat thing is that lists are relatively easy to make and not intimidating at all. This is great for someone who is starting out with creative writing, and it's playful. After you make your list of lists, pick one and make a specific list in your journal. Then pick a single word from that list and write a paragraph about it. Could that be the germ of an idea for a story or a memoir or a poem? The important part is to play, to have fun with this. So, to go over what we're thinking about this week, remember, you need to read. Read a lot. I get that reading for pleasure while you're in college is hard, but I guarantee you that it's never time wasted. You also need to write. It doesn't have to be long, but you need to try and have fun with it. The road ahead beckons. Where are you going to go? Thanks for tuning in this week. I will see you back here next week for Module 2. Bye-bye.